Hola, boa tarde. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thomas Hammer. I'm a product operations manager at Nubank, and I'm very excited to tell you a little bit about our journey of getting engineering engagement across the entire organization and even getting to a point where low cost to serve has become a strategic asset for us at Nubank. Before we go there, I think it's important to give you a few words, a little bit of context about Nubank, not because I think Nubank is awesome, which it is, but also to give you some context on the market that we operate in, on the clients that we serve, and why being cheaper than other competitors is so important for us, and our adoption rate of FinOps. So Nubank is the largest and most innovative financial services company in Latin America. And this past month, we just crossed the 100 million customer mark globally across Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, with the mission to fight complexity, paperwork, and all these inexplicable fees. But it's also part of our reality that we serve markets that are socioeconomically incredibly diverse, putting it mildly. There's a lot of poverty in Latin America, and a lot of these people are without access to any banking products. They used to be unbanked. Just think about that. If you're an old bank in Brazil, what's your interest to attract someone who doesn't have any money? It's incredibly hard to monetize these people with low financial education, low education altogether. So a lot of these people had been left behind in the financial market, didn't even have access to a banking product. But what every Brazilian does have access to is a cell phone. Brazil has one of the highest penetrations of social media and one of the highest FaceTimes on your device per day on the global scale, just trailing the Philippines. It's ridiculous. Every time you're in Brazil, chances are someone is on their phone. So in that sense, Nubank came in, offered a fully digital and easy to access financial product, banking product, and offers financial inclusion for millions and millions and millions of Brazilians, Colombians, and Mexicans, which also gives us a social responsibility in our country. Now, we offer a fair and transparent solution, and we surprise our customers with incredible attention to detail and transparency. If you've ever been to Brazil, chances are you've absolutely loved it, and chances are you've been at the beach drinking beer that's so cold that your brain freezes. Chances are that you've had coconut water, some grilled meat, and just watched all the circus that's happening all around you. And then at the end of the day, when your bill comes, you realize, man, that was only 20 bucks. Awesome. Anyways, if you're Brazilian, that card machine that you're using to pay, because you're sure not going to pay in cash, that card machine is going to give you the option to parcelar. That means split it into up to 12 installments, your spend. Think about that. Who here would parcelar $20? Probably no one. But in Brazil, part of the Brazilian culture is, let's enjoy today and tomorrow is tomorrow. So you just parcelar and you step right into that trap of a cheap consumer credit at an absurd interest rate down the road, up to like 30% on a 12-month period. That's just the way Brazil works. At Nubank, we don't believe in that. We try to be as transparent as possible and give people that didn't have the chance to participate in the financial market before to participate in a sustainable manner. It also makes it even harder to monetize those few products that people use, which is in our case the bank account and the credit card. And that makes it even more important to operate at low margins and be cheaper than the competition in production. Now today, there are over 7,000 new bankers that serve the 100 million customers globally. And most of these new bankers are engineers. So we're actually really a tech company that offers a banking product. Now, if you see these products that we offer across our 3 countries, what you see is we all have in common is they all offer a credit card and they all offer an account. Actually, Colombia is set to roll out the account in a little bit once we settle with the regulator. But that's about to come. But those products really don't give any operating margin. They are easy products, basis products, but they don't make you rich. And that's because the clients who use them aren't rich. We've been building on top of that. We are in the process of rolling out a bunch of other awesome products. We're now getting into lending, investments, crypto, small and medium entities, insurance, market-based portfolio. crypto, basically anything that you would expect from a large retail bank. But adoption of these products is low because people, A, don't know these products, and B, don't have any money to invest in these products. So what these products do for us right now, from a cloud cost perspective, is they add infrastructure cost, plain and simple. So that makes it even more expensive to run them and drives down our margin even more. So I'm going to show you something from the investors call of our most recent earnings call. And it shows you that our cost to serve, despite of everything that I've just mentioned, has been flat, sitting at just under $1 per customer. Now that's a testament to the success that we've had of implementing FinOps across the entire organization and to driving our cloud costs as low as possible by getting to every single engineer. This is an aggregate number. This is not only cloud cost, but cloud cost is Nubank's second largest, biggest expense. So it's in there, and it's in there big time. And if you look at our scales, just think of the impact that the decision of a single engineer in our account team has to scale up our transaction services. Millions. Changing a credit policy on a DynamoDB table. Millions. Changing a storage bucket, S3 bucket, on a customer data storage database. Millions. So for us, it's really essential to get to every single last engineer and getting them to buy into the FinOps journey. So how do we do it at Nubank? Before I get to the tools, I promise I will get there. I think it's also important to show how we structured FinOps at Nubank. We have a central team, as probably every practitioning company here does. That's the CFM team, Cloud Financial Management, that is responsible for policy and governance, cost monitoring and reporting, the CFM infrastructure, education, financial engineering, buying savings plans, reserved instances, basically everything that you would expect from a central team. And this team is consisting of 3 product operations who are responsible for billing, tooling, and administrative tasks, 2 analytics engineers, and 4 business analysts who hold the relationship with the business units, do the cost analysis, and the chargeback logics. We have partnered that central team with something that is very successful at Nubank, and that's the decentral component. We call those BU cost champions. It's actually been so successful that at the last AWS reInvent convention, this concept was on stage as a shining example for how to leverage FinOps into business units outside of just the central team by getting force multipliers at every single business unit, someone who advocates for AWS cost and AWS cost efficiency in all the decentral BUs. We have over 30 BUs in Nubank, so imagine trying to tackle all of these with a single team. It just won't work. These people, these cost champions, are usually engineers, either senior individual contributors or junior managers that want to take the next step and combine their engineering background with business context, with FinOps scope, to take the next step in the career ladder. Because also what you get, especially in larger BUs, is you get FaceTime with your general manager, which otherwise probably wouldn't even know your name. You get to talk to product owners and engineering managers within the BU. So we've established this role as a strategic career opportunities, at least in those business units that have already high scale of operations and high product market adoptions, where this role is actually a full-time role. It's the top right quadrant. We call those tier A BUs with a full-time cost champion, and then it scales down as either product market operations or scale of operations decrease. So that makes it 50 plus mini FinOps experts in each BU, plus the central team. So you already have 60 people who are fighting on your side. So that has been a key success enabler for us as we've rolled into the entire organization. So now let's look at the tools that we've deployed to actually get there, what we've actually put in front of engineers to help them understand and be effective as the driving force behind cost efficiency at Nubank. If you understand that every single engineering decision is really a buying decision, you also understand why every engineer is important on your FinOps journey and on your journey to just be efficient and have low cost to serve. The struggle that we have is that Nubank hasn't really been around that long. Nubank has been around for 10 years, and we're now at 100 million customers. So imagine the growth curve that we've taken. And just 4 years ago, when I joined, our CTO was basically running around the company and telling every engineer, pretend as if the cloud is free, which is fine in a growth phase, because what you really want to do is you want to buy an awesome product and fast to get market penetration. But there is a point when there just aren't any more Brazilians left to become our customer, and when the business growth curve detaches from an exponentially growing cloud cost curve. So it's also a change of mindset that we had to achieve to overcome this lack of focus on cost and really put it on every single engineer's agenda. So the trifecta that you see at the bottom that we've used is educate, motivate, and hold accountable. I'm going to start with educate because we believe that it's the first step that you need to take to explain to engineers what their cost actually is. How can someone be cost efficient who doesn't even know their cost? So one of our game changers was achieving transparency over cost and usage at the business unit level and at the squad level, and even beyond that, down to the resource level. We used external tooling for this. Why is external tooling important? Well, you can easily build dashboards internally, but for us, we were A, getting to technical limitations on Looker, and B, if you're rolling out governance at the same time that you're trying to maximize transparency and correctness, you'll get to a point where the messenger and the message are the same. So whenever there is something wrong with your cost, what do people automatically do? They try to shoot the messenger. And it's awesome to have someone else being the messenger. So this is why we've accelerated with an external cloud transparency provider. I'm very happy with the tool Cloud Zero. It helped us a lot in our journey. Something else to complement this was proactively creating documentation. Because I'm personally not an engineer, it was astonishing to me to see how fast engineers ingest any documentation that you give them. Basically, anything we pump out on our Confluence immediately had crazy click numbers. People were so willing to consume these documentations to learn about cost, to learn about chargebacks, to learn about how we allocate Kubernetes container costs to them. And that has made a huge difference for us in adoption. We've then migrated to automated alerts and reporting at a place where the engineer already is, which is at their squad Slack channel, which is our basic communication tool. We're leveraging our reporting partners to send weekly reports of cloud cost spikes and cloud cost variations to every single squad. It's over 400 every week. So there's really no engineer that can run away from being confronted with their cloud cost. Something that we've introduced recently is we've managed to put mandatory FinOps training in the onboarding agenda of every engineer. Just imagine 2 years ago, nobody even knew what costs are, and today they are forced to listen to 35 minutes of training on FinOps. Really a great success for us. And then we also don't get tired of stressing the scale of operations. I said it 5 minutes ago, changing the instance type of an EC2 instance or just scaling up your Kubernetes clusters might seem small for that one engineer, but on a yearly basis has huge impact in the millions. So we are not getting tired of stressing that every single engineering decision that you make is a buying decision that can set Nubank either back or improve our cost to serve ratio. And then finally, I'm not here to tell an engineer how to engineer. Engineers know way better what they're doing. And on a good day, cost is criteria number 5. First of all, you have to build an awesome product. You have to make it work technically. And since we're a bank, you also have regulation and security concerns. So once you've considered all those 4, maybe there's cost considerations. So we don't tell engineers how to engineer, but we make sure they have their cost available to them at all times and can make it a consideration when they design their products. Just to show you that this isn't just PowerPoint, this is here an illustration of our training. It's actually there, and then you see those weekly reports that we send out to over 400 squads on a weekly basis on a really, really granular level based on squads and AWS product and week-over-week variations. So you're really getting, as an engineer, every week, you don't even have to do anything, you get this message right in your face and should be aware of your cloud cost on the level that you can interact with, because even if it's on the BU level, some BUs have over 200 engineers. What's that one engineer going to do about a 5% cost increase? Probably not so much, but if you do it on a squad level, it's much more tangible and much more relatable for that single engineer. So that's on the educate part. Something that I've learned in Brazil is that people really thrive around celebrating success together. I think there's something. Anyways, so what we do is we celebrate cost victories, large or small, at the company level. We have 3 things that we do. One is every time an engineer implements a cost victory, we estimate that cost victory. Doesn't matter if it's $1 million or $1,000 on an annual level, that engineer gets a blog post on our central engineering channels, and that engineer gets private mentioning and recognition. And Brazilians love to rally about these success stories. They love to interact and cheer for each other. So for us, this is like an incredible incentive for engineers to do the right thing, do the cost-efficient thing. This also gets called out in our central AWS reporting meetings, where we have the CFO, the company president, and the CTO regularly present. So imagine getting your name out to those people. And they do interact in these meetings and give shout-outs to the individual engineer, which is awesome. And then third, our CTO has even created an award. It's called the Golden Hataria. It's an award that basically describes something that you made out of nothing to save dollars for the company out of thin air, basically. Also something amazing. I apologize, the text doesn't seem to match what I'm saying, but bear with me here on that one. And then this is an example that I brought of, or a few examples actually, to just show you how people interact with positive recognition. On these Slack channels where these messages get posted, just the amount and the creativity of people reacting to these positive messages is just absolutely stunning. And if you see this little circle there at the bottom, this is our CTO. So even these senior people come in and support the message of our central team to really celebrate the small little engineer and their cost victory. So for us, this has really made a huge difference in getting to celebrate achievements, incentivizing people, and making sure that every engineer knows that it's important. We also work with personal notes. Whenever there's a cost victory from an engineer, or something that contributes to a cost victory, we go to our central human resource tool, our performance evaluation tool, and we write a small note. Hey, João did this awesome contribution to the cost savings roadmap of global bank account. Awesome. And then at the end of the year, when it's performance review time, those things get collected by the manager, and it's basically like those patches that you have on your necklaces. So just this motivational aspect reflects a lot about Brazilian culture in general, rallying around joint successes. So I come from a country, I'm actually German, my nationality is German, and I grew up in Germany. In Germany, this is not like this. Like, you try to celebrate success more quietly, and people would never contribute on that level. So that also has to match your company's DNA and the DNA of your engineers. So for us, this has been very successful. If you haven't gotten around through education or motivation, there is the third pillar, and that's holding people and holding engineers accountable. Now, the most successful and effective tool we've leveraged for accountability is come up with granular and individually relevant budgets. We used to come from a world where we had one single Nubank budget to a world where we had over 30 business unit budgets to a world where we now have over 80 different squad budgets for our largest squads, for our largest services. So that makes it really granular for the engineer and really makes the impact tangible for that single engineering decision. It also forces the engineer to think about the roadmap of the engineering and of the future of the business pipeline. We in Nubank work with Jira cards, as probably most tech companies do, and we are forcing every single engineer to tag a Jira card with a flag if it has a AWS cost impact. So you cannot push one of these cards to production unless you say, my costs are expected to increase, my costs are expected to decrease, or I don't know. I don't know is an option, but we do central reporting, and we try to work with those people who selected I don't know. Usually an engineer should have an idea, right, if he's adding or decreasing infrastructure, if the cost is going up or down. So this also, on top of giving relevance to the engineer, also helps us in the central team, because how else would we centrally know what is the cost impact roadmap? 2 years ago, we could maybe tell you 1 or 2 central initiatives, maybe Graviton implementation, whatever, that would have an impact on our future AWS cost, but that was about it. And now we can take an export of the entire engineering roadmap in Nubank, filter for these AWS flags, and see which cards are going to increase, which cards are going to decrease. We also have a magnitude indicator, like 0 to 10K, 10K to 100K. That's when it gets a little less accurate, of course, but just to have an indication if the initiative is small, medium, or huge. So we do that. We also investigate cost spikes and create postmortems. But we try to do this as positively as possible, because it's really easy to expose people after a crash, but then you've lost those people forever. Those people will then not be able to, but they will not work with you anymore on a productive basis. They will basically just be working from fear, at least for that performance cycle. So what we try to do is frame those crashes, frame those over-provisioning as learning opportunities and turn them into something positive, because no one acts in bad faith. And the bad example from one engineer, or the engineering learning opportunity from one engineer, might easily be something for someone else. So that's also very important, at least in our culture. Then our team, our central team, provides the framework, but we won't do the work. I've said it before. I'm not going to tell an engineer how to engineer, and I'm also not going to tell an engineer that cost efficiency is more important than launching the next big thing, launching the next big feature. So all we do is provide transparency and the framework, but the prioritization on your backlog, that has to come from the engineers themselves, and it also creates then more personal motivation to follow the roadmap that you've created yourself and to prioritize cost savings initiatives as they fit in. And then finally, in our central reporting meetings, we used to have really bad participation. Was basically just another burden on the BUs to come to these monthly meetings, report, yes, we're 30% above budget, but we don't have anything to do about it. Or our unit metrics are looking good, we have double the demand, so obviously we're going to be above budget. As we have gotten low traction, we also included leadership in these meetings to make sure that people show up on time, which is also sometimes difficult in Brazil, and have the content prepared for this meeting. So that's how we hold them accountable. And then something that I wanted to add here is every engineer responds to something different in terms of communication. So some engineer thinks it's awesome to go to a Slack channel, start a discussion via a question, and thrives of the engagement that he gets from the community. There are some threads in our channels that gets hundreds of responses across all different business units, and people really thrive off that. Then there are engineers who don't like to be exposed, who need personal contact, and who then can leverage their business unit's cost champion as like a private point of contact that they can send a DM, have the issue a little bit smaller and get their questions answered this way. And then lastly, what I've said in the beginning, documentation has completely blown me away. I didn't know how much engineers love documentation. Something where the engineers can go proactively and consume what's already there without having to ask those questions. So having a different avenue of communication for every engineer based on their personality also makes sure that you don't lose anyone in the process and that everyone feels a safe space to ask the questions. So those 3 items, teach, motivate, hold accountable, have done a great service for us at Nubank to help us to engage engineers across the entire organization, to hold our cost to serve at less than $1 and to keep offering awesome and cheap products to millions of otherwise unbanked Brazilians, Colombians, and Mexicans. But our journey doesn't end there. We've made some considerations on what are our next steps on our journey, what can be done beyond teaching, educating, and holding accountable. So our next endeavors are probably focusing on usage over cost. Right now, cost is our gold standard that we show to engineers, and it's important, right? Every engineer needs to know what their product costs. What we've done is we've factored all the different line items that you receive in your cloud provider bill, and that cannot be influenced by the engineer out. So that's your support charge, that's your credit, that's your like one-time fees, for example. So we only show what we call operational cost, and that's already a pretty good proxy for usage, but it's not a proxy for usage. It still doesn't completely correspond to vCPU units. It doesn't correspond to scaling decisions on Kubernetes. So one of our next steps is to make sure that we present even more actionable metrics to the engineer around usage rather than cost. Because cost in the end of the day is what? It's usage times price, and the price is driven by a central unit and beyond the control of the engineer. So usage is even more actionable for the engineer. I've talked about unit metrics. And every business unit in Nubank has their own unit metrics. We even have squads that have unit metrics. So we have over 50 telemetry streams that we send to our cloud transparency provider per day. And that's great. That has already broken the mantra of increasing cloud costs are bad, because they're not. But something that we need to work on is margin considerations. As Nubank matures, we have to be more aware of our margin, which means that engineers have to think about, are resources creating business value, at least in the vertical business units? Are those 100,000 of development cost or additional resource cost worth the increase in customer satisfaction, revenue, whatever, but is it creating enough business value to make the investment worthwhile? And then something that we've discovered over the past year is scaling decisions are not always reflected in unit metrics, because if you have a high amount of fixed cost, scaling up or down doesn't really correspond to your economic reality anymore. So if you have less than expected demand on one of your services, but the service isn't really going down, that means that you have a high amount of fat, high amount of fixed cost. So these the scaling decisions that an engineer makes don't really have an impact anymore corresponding to the economic reality of that single business unit. So this is the next frontier for Nubank's journey on engineering engagement. I hope you've enjoyed what we've shown you so far. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thanks.
Thomas, thank you so much. Big round of applause. That was excellent. I love that presentation, Thomas. Thank you. It's so really cool to think about FinOps being a key to offering these banking services to underbanked people. That's awesome. All right, what do we have for questions here? I know we got we're going to have a lot of questions for Thomas. Who wants to kick it off? All right.
So as you began engaging with your engineers, my organization, we're in that place. Like we're taking our on-prem data centers, shutting them down, migrating everything into the cloud. We have a lot of engineers that this is a total life shift. How long, from an expectation point, how long do you think it took you to really get the energy going with the different tools that you used?
I mean, we're still working on that today, right? I think it's a never-ending journey. That sounds very non-specific, but it really is. On the other hand, the day we put cost in front of the engineer was already the day that the engineer started caring. Even if you have low tagging coverage, even if you can't assign your shared cost, even if you don't have awesome tooling, even if the engineer doesn't know where to go, the moment you put it in front of them, how much their services cost is the day that this mindset changes. And I'm a big proponent of, I'd rather put something incomplete in front of the engineer than to wait for that day until you have your final Kubernetes and Kafka allocations in place and the company has signed off on chargebacks. I'd rather start with whatever you have to get this journey going. At least that's what we've done, and we've had incredible support with on day zero, basically turning the switch, going to our external cloud provider and showing them here. We know it's not complete, but your service costs how many ever $1,000 per month. That already is a very powerful message that you can show to an engineer.
Yeah, just a quick response to one of your comments about you didn't realize how much engineers like documentation. They only like documentation written by someone else. Number one. But I completely agree with you, right? So building that body of knowledge, how-to guides, tips and tricks is critical because they need the reference material. They can't memorize everything. They need a repository or a wiki or something to go back to, right? It's like I can't remember how to optimize da-da-da-da-da, right? So I completely agree with you from a core FinOps team. We need to provide a lot of documentation, but those engineers only like to consume someone else's docs. So,
and to that end, I think it also can never be too much documentation or too detailed. For one of the most complex documentations that we have is on our allocation logics, right? How do we charge back Kubernetes? I'm totally out of that. I have no technical background, so like for me this sounds like rocket science. But just to see the click numbers on our Confluence platform, how engineers are consuming this, just completely blew me away. And also, no one ever complained to me, this is too complex. The complaints that I've gotten is like, wow, it's awesome. I want to know more on this particular line item in line 30. All right, cool. We'll try to get it to you, but happy that you are consuming this and happy that you are taking ownership in your cost. How do we want engineers to want that data? Well, that's pretty easy. If you show them cost, they want to know where this cost is coming from, right? All of a sudden you tell an engineer, hey, by the way, your login service costs 10 cents every time a user logs into the app. The engineer is going to be like, wait, 10 cents? I had no idea. I want to know where is this coming from, which service is charging me back, how much does my Kafka message cost? So then this really drives the adoption of that. Yeah.
Hey, Thomas. Obrigado pela palestra. Yeah, thanks for the talk. That was in Portuguese. I'm Brazilian, guys. So. Yeah. So one thing about the documentation still, like, do you guys have? Is the documentation about like how to use the FinOps tooling? Do you also document like best practices and how to achieve savings? Like, what kind of like optimizations you would like people to do? So at which level goes this?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. That was on the Motivate slide that got cut. So what we maintain in Nubank is a savings initiative repository where we basically log every single initiative that every engineer has ever done in that calendar year. We estimate it out to an annual rate reduction. We link to the Slack message, we link to the documentation that engineer has done, and that in itself already serves as an inspiration for other engineers, because if the credit card engineer managed to put their DynamoDB table in a different table class that saves money, everyone else could possibly do that who owns a DynamoDB table. And engineers, as much as they love us from CFM, They love to hear from each other, and they love to see what other engineers have done and get inspired by that. So we maintain this sort of like a wall of fame, right? So here, and last year we had over 130 initiatives in our tracker on an annual basis. So that tells you how prestigious it is to appear with your name on that tracker with an initiative, and to tell everyone, I saved 60,000 reais per year for Nubank. So that's has a very motivating effect on engineers, and it also kind of stirs the competitive spirit of every engineer, right? I also want to be on that. My squad should also be there. Hey, by the way, I did that you had no idea about, but I think it saved 10K. So that's how we make sure that we also have the visibility around that.
A little healthy competition is a great motivator, right? Who has the next question? All right, all the way in the back.
Earlier you mentioned moving from a single budget for cloud down to, I forget, there was an intermediate number, and then to 80. I guess how over what period of time did that happen, and did you find it difficult to sell that to the stakeholders that now they're going to be responsible for it?
Yeah, it's probably one of the most difficult things you can do when you go to FinOps, when you implement FinOps. It's budgeting, moving away from so last year we grew 40%, so let's do another 40 to now we're budgeting with unit metrics. So actually the budget is not made anymore by CFM. It's actually kind of made by finance, because we get business demand drivers, and we just multiply it with the unit cost. We've then seen that even if you do it on a business unit level, there are some business units who have a huge variety of products that they offer. Central platform teams are usually a good example, because they have Kubernetes, database, S3, CI/CD, whatever. So one central unit metric does not drive the cost for probably 90% of the business unit. So from there, we try to iterate down to squad with the goal to get a good correlation between business metric and cost, and to also on a secondary effect helps you to identify fixed costs, because we have business units that basically the cost is relatively stable, even though the business demand fluctuates heavily. So that also helps you to discover that services are not scaling down efficiently. But on this journey we're still. So even though we're doing it for some squads, my goal is eventually to give every BU the freedom to segment their business unit into, doesn't even have to be squads, can be single microservices, can even be a component of a microservice, can even be the Kubernetes cost, and to forecast that out. It adds complexity, yes, because you have to maintain a huge amount of demand drivers that puts stress on you, that puts, as a central FinOps team, that puts stress on the cloud transparency provider, and it puts stress on the analytics engineers to maintain those metrics. But it really makes your bank better. The more accurate you can correlate between business demand and cost. All you really need then is the business demand, and we operate on yearly budgeting cycles. What we really should be able to do is when we get updated forecasts from the business, we should be able to push a button and get rolling forecasts and not stick to these assumptions we made a year ago, because probably a lot of you experience this problem that your growth curve throughout the year kind of detaches from your previous business assumptions, and then your budget by design is already wrong. We've had that problem in Nubank for years. There was an investor call shortly after our IPO was the first investor call we ever did, where at the end an analyst basically said to our CFO in financial terms, but he basically said, I believe you have a cloud cost problem. What are you going to do about it? So that also has then accelerated our journey, because what's fascinating to our CFO is even more fascinating to us. So that has helped also the adoption throughout the entire company.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. Really a lot of stuff. Really a lot of cool stuff. What really strikes me is the idea of having these custom Jira cards. Can you please expand more, how it works? What are you achieving with that, and like, yeah, what's the mechanics?
Yeah, so on an epic and initiative level, which are our most used levels in Jira, or our most card type, an engineer is required to select as a first flag, does this card have an AWS cost impact? Increase, decrease, or I don't know. And I think there's also no impact. Yeah, got to be no impact. So then as a secondary step, once it's increase or decrease, you're then forced to make an estimate on monthly change that this is going to have. Like, is this change going to impact my business unit's cost by 1 million, by 10,000, we have some ranges predefined. And you need to fill this to push your card to production. Or to in progress, I think is a Jira term. And then we run central exports of all the cards. We have over 800 Jira boards in Nubank. We do one central export, and then we all have this into one consolidated table that's, of course, insanely huge. But you can filter by BU, you can filter by squad, you can filter by increase or decrease. So if your BU is over or underperforming the budget, every single person in Nubank, including the CFO, can go to that board and be like, I see you're 1 million above budget. What are you doing about it? I only see increases on your agenda. What are you doing about it? So that takes also stress away from the annual planning cycles. It makes it more dynamic for business to react to increasing costs.
So it's not added to your forecast. It's more like additional data source where you can see how the individual squad is performing.
Yeah, yes, it's not automatically connected, but when we budget, we take those exports and we already put it onto the expected initiatives section of each team's budget file, and we force them to estimate the impact on unit cost also. So then it really becomes a math problem.
I had exactly the same question if it goes into kind of forecasting. So let me ask another question. You said you have mandatory trainings for onboarding new engineers. Are there also mandatory trainings for existing engineers, or?
Our mandatory training for existing engineers is to show them their weekly cost, and then they will be forced to learn with this anyways. But no, jokes aside, we only have this in our onboarding curriculum so far. But I guess you could just, if you haven't watched this before, every training is accessible for almost everyone across the bank. So nothing would stop you to proactively consume this training. And one other thing about Brazilians, they're extremely eager to learn. Because education is so scarce across the entire population, or so differentiated, every opportunity that a Brazilian sees to learn has really also blown me away when I arrived. They just want to learn. It's insane. Much more willing than Germans, for example, in a work scope.
All right, it looks like you're off the hook, Thomas. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Big round of applause. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.